Google just faced defeat in a decision by the DOJ. What happened there? Are they a monopoly, Pat? Is Google a monopoly?
Well, we're going to have a lot of those questions, but let me get the news under U.S. federal judge basically says it's a monopoly using its search engine and anti-competitive practices. And the big spotlight here was on deals that Google did to get default search. And by the way, selling defaults on devices literally goes back to when I was in the PC market. I had buttons on my keyboard that I would sell. And inside of the search engine, we would get money for the default search. And that's turned into just a gigantic business. So, numbers here, Google has about a $200 billion ad business. Google pays Apple around $20 billion a year to be the default search engine. And that's 25% roughly of Apple's entire services industry. And one thought I have is who could this potentially benefit? What could be the downstream effects here? I mean, we haven't seen the details of exactly where this could go. And by the way, Google's appealing here, but I've seen people speculate that the company could get broken up. You could outlaw doing default search, given how massive the company is. Microsoft had a very similar experience when it had Internet Explorer, and that was implicated in anti-competitive issues with Microsoft. Microsoft almost got broken up. By the way, in fact, a judge actually said it had to be broken up. And there was some negotiation that kept that back on there. But this has to be some sort of a benefit to Microsoft with Bing, and maybe even Perplexity and OpenAI here. I can't imagine, if they're not found guilty, that this might impact them. And what does that do to Apple? By the way, the services revenue, 25%. I mean, imagine that getting that basically going away, because it's been the bright spot with Apple.
But does it go away, or does this just open up competitive bidding?
It opens up competitive bidding, but I got to tell you, Apple's lead guy, I can't believe I forget his name. Eddie Q said you couldn't pay him to use Microsoft.
I saw that.
You couldn't pay him to use Microsoft Bing. Well, he might have to think about spreading the love here. One thing that the DOJ did with Microsoft, and again, looking at the history, this is fun being history, is they're in the boot up of the new PC, it had to give you a choice of which browser to use, and you had to embed in there a way to change your default search. And Daniel, maybe you can dive into this part. I've already talked too long, but is this onerous regulation or true anti-competitive nature? And we got a big companies paying another trillion, Mag 7 company all this money, which just factually, of course, it limits the level of competition, and that. But is this just because Google is better than Bing or something like that?
Yeah, this is funny. I'm actually want to even take a slightly different direction here, Pat. But
I'd like you to answer my question.
I will.
No, go ahead.
I will. I eventually will. But I'm media trained. I don't answer your question. I talk about what I want. That's the deal. It's a stupid time to actually regulate this. Search is just about to hit the absolute pivot, shift, inflection point of which its relevance. Apple's got its new intelligence product. Pat, you and I are. Pat, what do you search on now? What do you do your search
on? Perplexity is 9 out of 10 searches that I do.
And then after that, it's some derivative of everything else, right? That you tend to bounce between. Now, again, you're the cutting edge. you're a leading innovator, but you are at the front edge, and you are setting the trends, and people are following these trend lines. And what I'm saying is we have a horde of trend lines that are about to change. We're about to see new PCs, new smartphone devices, new search engines that are going to be developed. I mean, look, the other day I shared one that an open source, fully open source stack that used Llama, that used Grok, and a bunch of other open source tools to create a search that I would say on 5 tries was 95% as good as I was getting out of ChatGPT. And now you see ChatGPT creating Search GPT. Google's got its own challenges right now. And I mean, look, the Bing with GPT thing did not really move the needle. It didn't. But that's because we haven't really seen the inflection to which search has shifted from being something that, but as everybody starts to pick this up, Pat, as everybody starts to use these generative tools for search, these abstracts, these summaries, the regular search as we know isn't going to be a thing. So if I'm Apple, I'm looking at the whole situation and I'm basically like, look, I don't really care. I want as much money as possible. We'll sell this thing off. We'll continue to use our giant customer platform, and we're going to make as much as we can. And by the way, to your point about what Apple said, they do want to deliver a good experience. That is still Apple's thing. And I don't know about you. I played with Bing search. I played with DuckDuckGo. I played. Google still does the best search. Now, to the point, I'm also like you. I've moved to Perplexity for almost everything because I just find the outputs better for me in most cases. So how long before that tail wags the dog? Meaning we are the early, but how long before that starts to come up? And then now you've got a whole new ecosystem. So Apple's busy building and training models and developing Apple Intelligence. And so in the long run, I just wonder how long this is viable, period. Now, back to your question. They have to offer the best product. They have to have the best service. And to my point is, what does it really accomplish by opening the door and bringing in Microsoft? This isn't a knock, by the way. Like, let's even say it's all even. Like, does that suddenly make this less anti-competitive to bring the $3 trillion company in to displace the $2 trillion company? Who else has a default search engine that would provide customers at a level of experience that they're going to expect when they're using their iPhone? Or they're, so what is Lina Khan doing? Like, why is this the most important thing to spend time regulating? Kind of?
Yeah, it's almost like, let's think of Qualcomm, who has literally 95% share of the Android premium chip market. Like, does that mean that Lina Khan can come in and say, to the phone makers, to Samsung, you're no longer allowed, Qualcomm, you're no longer allowed to sell that many premium chips to Samsung, right? And like where does this thing end?
Yeah, I you know what, I can't tell you, Pat, but I just mean, like, this to me feels like litigating it. We're litigating history, not the future. Spend the effort and the time figuring out how to manage that generative AI tools are accurate, grounded, capable, distributed, because search is literally going to go the search as we know it over the next decade is going to go the way of the dodo bird.
Yeah,
it just isn't going to be the same. And so, if I'm Google, I'm doubling down on Gemini, trying to build a better mousetrap there, trying to make sure highest fidelity, accurate, lowest hallucination. I'm looking at the Google search business the way Hock Tan looks at any business he buys. I want to absolutely I want to massively win the business until it's no longer a business. But you got to believe me, like, search as we know it is not going to be the same in 10 years, not even in 5. I mean, look how fast generative has changed your behavior. But we're sort of technological nerds. We're geeks. But our kids are, and by the way, last thought, our kids, what are they using to search right now? I mean, but
TikTok.
Yeah, let's assume they're doing any real level of research. Don't you think a lot of them have picked up ChatGPT though, and the generative tools they're using? That
Yeah, I know my son has. I don't know. I don't think my daughters have.
Okay,
yet.
Well, I know my kids in college are, like, my college age kids are definitely using those tools heavily. I mean, schools are rethinking how they teach and how to manage that, because they can't expect kids to not use these tools to influence their outcomes. Just like when search first hit, we are at an inflection that I think people are ignoring. But like I said, Lina Khan and the DOJ the FTC. They want to win something. To me, this just feels like probably another fine, another speed bump, another case, but it's not really feature forward as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's interesting with these lawsuits here in the U.S. It's almost like we have a proxy gatekeeper um, rule, like we had, what's going on with the EU.